It's very easy for a politician to pay lip service to an incredibly popular policy like Medicare for All and get a world of praise and a world of credit for doing the bare minimum and acknowledging fact that single payer is objectively better than private health insurance system that we have now. This requires very little to no effort for a politician to do this. You can only do the song and dance for so long. Eventually, people are going to require more. People are going to require action and have to see that you're actually fighting for this policy. You can do all the tweets and the Instagram lives and the fancy floor speeches about how great Medicare for All is, but what are you actually doing to use leverage, to exert power to make it happen? I knew eventually this game was going to come to an end. That this game that Bernie and AOC and all the other elected progressives are playing, where they put on this front like they're actually fighting for Medicare for All, but they're really not. I knew that couldn't last forever. The real question in my mind was, how long is it going to take for everybody else on the left to realize that this is all bullshit? That they aren't much better than corporate Democrats stringing us along and telling us, oh, we can't do it now. We have to wait till later. We can't fight for it now. We have to maintain we can't just waste our political capital on it. Yet we have to wait until we know it's going to pass. I was just very curious how long it was going to take for the rest of the left to catch on to this. And honestly, it took way too long. But this weekend, after a series of events, AOC finally exposed herself as a fraud on Twitter and got a wave of backlash from people on the left who are normally very defensive of AOC and still view her as an ally. She really shit the bed, and it seems like a lot of them are catching on to what we already knew. And one of the most notable examples of this was Kyle Kulinski. So I think this was a very important defining moment for the left right now, because all those people who are still out there hoping that a politician is just going to come and save the day, whether it's Bernie Sanders or AOC or Ilhan Omar, this kind of opened their eyes. And now they're starting to see how futile this whole effort of trying to get Medicare for All through electoral politics is. It's not going to happen. And I feel like this moved some people way more closer to where we need to be, which is organizing direct actions, strikes, protests, maybe even a general strike, to put immense untenable pressure on politicians so that they can do the bare fucking minimum and provide healthcare to their citizens in the middle of a pandemic, a deadly global pandemic where we're the epicenter, a public health emergency that none of us have ever seen in our lifetime, on top of a crippling, unprecedented economic crisis. The bare minimum they can do right now is provide healthcare, especially after they gave trillions of dollars to the rich and corporations during the crisis and gave us nothing. The bare minimum they can do is provide us healthcare. So the only way we're going to get that is through direct action, and hopefully AOC admitting publicly that what we all knew, what we all on this channel knew, which is that there is no secret strategy that the elected progressives are trying to pull off behind the scenes to get Medicare for All. They aren't actually doing anything to get Medicare for All. So I'm going to get into this, but first, you guys already know the deal. I love doing the show for you guys, but I wanted this to be the main thing I do. So in order for that to be the case, it needs to be sustainable. So if you can contribute through Patreon, I have the link to my Patreon account and the about page of the YouTube channel. I also have a link to my PayPal and the about page of the YouTube channel. And I'm incredibly grateful for all the people who've contributed over the last few months, because you guys help me do what I love. And there aren't words big enough to express how much that means to me. So if you guys can contribute, any amount helps. All the links are in the about page of the YouTube channel. Now back to this story. So really all of this began when a couple weeks ago, Jimmy Dore laid down the line for the elected progressives. And he said, if they don't, because currently the majority that the Democrats have in the House is so slim that it could come down to less than 10 votes to determine whether or not Nancy Pelosi will become the Speaker of the House again. So Jimmy Dore said, we have enough elected progressives. This is the moment they've all been waiting for. They keep saying, "Oh, we don't have the numbers to make any to make any real demands to force policies." Well, this is the moment we've been waiting for. If all the elected progressives withhold their vote for Nancy Pelosi to be Speaker of the House, unless and until she brings it up for Medicare for all, up for a floor vote in the House, if the elected progressives don't do that, then they don't actually mean it. They're not actually fighting for Medicare for all. They're not willing to go to the mat for it. If they aren't willing to threaten Nancy Pelosi and the Democrats getting the majority of the votes in the House needed to become Speaker, then they're just all talk. Now, this plan from Jimmy Dore has gotten so much traction. So many people, journalists, independent people in left new media, prominent lefties on social media and Twitter, they've all gotten on board with this. Even people who very much dislike Jimmy Dore, like Sam Cedar, has said this is a good idea and there's no reason why this shouldn't be done. So most of us are seeing this as a common sense position. And there is no earthly explanation why they wouldn't do this if they were serious about getting people Medicare for all in the middle of a pandemic. So I'm not going to read all the tweets and all the interactions in this, but I'll give you guys a quick summary of what happened. Justin Jackson, he's an NFL player. He plays for the Chargers, and he's a fan of Secular Talk, Kyle Kalinske show. And this has been known for a while. And he's become a prominent voice pushing left politics and policies on Twitter. So he, in a tweet, he adds AOC and he says, and he also adds Jimmy Dore and says, if AOC and the squad don't do what Jimmy Dore is suggesting by, withholding their vote for Nancy Pelosi for Medicare for all, they'll be exposing themselves. So she responds to this tweet with a bunch of apologetics and mental gymnastics to justify not doing that. And she says, quote, the Dem votes aren't there yet, and with a razor thin margin, the Dem no votes are more than the margin. I don't even know what that means. And then she continues, quote, so you issue threats, hold your vote, and lose, then what? If you want to know who's opposed, look at the co-sponsored list. So, right, and it gets worse than this. She keeps digging the hole even worse than this. But what that was is AOC, the champion of Medicare for all, universal healthcare, she's making excuses why the Democrats shouldn't bring it up for a floor vote. And she says, we don't need it. If you want to know who co-sponsors it, just look at the bill. That's how you know who supports Medicare for all and who doesn't. For 100 people have co-sponsored Medicare for all in the House. 100 people. Guess how many of them have put any pressure on Nancy Pelosi to bring it up for a vote? None of them have. None of them have. None of them have. They're all Democrats. Democrats control the House. Nancy Pelosi is the Speaker of the House. How many of the 100 people who have co-signed Medicare for all in the House have put pressure on her to do it? None of them. So who co-sponsors that bill? Anybody can slap their name on a piece of paper that's dead on arrival. That doesn't mean anything. You know who co-sponsored the Medicare for all bill that's in the Senate? Kamala Harris, Elizabeth Warren, some other people who we know for a fact do not support Medicare for all. Kamala Harris dropped Medicare for all immediately during the campaign trail, during the primary. And she tried to do this bait and switch where she was trying to call her shitty kind of public option, but mostly private health insurance for-profit private health insurance plan. She tried to call that Medicare for all. So what you introduce means nothing. What you co-sponsor means nothing. Anybody can put their name on a bill that they know isn't going to go anywhere. What we need to know is who is going to actually be there to vote for Medicare for all. That's one of the even if progressives fought Nancy Pelosi for this, they brought it up for a vote on the floor, and it loses, even if that was the case, then everybody who went on the record to vote against Medicare for all in the middle of a pandemic and the worst economic crisis in U.S. history, anybody who had the balls enough to take that position publicly, well, they just committed career suicide, and we're about to run them all out of town. That's just what it is. So there are no downsides to this, and really, there's a good chance that just that position, putting them in that position where they would have to vote against giving American public health care in the middle of a pandemic, healthcare that would cost less than we already pay for the for-profit private health insurance system that we have now. For anybody to take that position, it would just be pure rank corruption. And who knows? Maybe they would be so afraid of the shame and the public backlash that would come with a no vote. Maybe we would get a majority to say, all right, fuck it, we have to vote yes on this, or else we're just going to look like complete assholes, and we're going to expose this oligarchy, and that we just work for corporations and our donors, and we don't really give a fuck about our constituents. Maybe that pressure of having to be on the record on such an important issue at such a defining moment, maybe that alone could get a yes vote, and maybe we could pass Medicare for all through the House. Who knows? Who knows? So why give up the fight before it's even had? Why concede that you already lost before you put any effort and put any fight into trying to determine the outcome of this? But here's the real reason. AOC, say she does support Medicare for all still. Say she does. The reason why she doesn't want to bring it up for a vote on the floor, it's because it's not because she's afraid of using capital or whatever bullshit excuses she's giving on Twitter now. It's because, like I've said for months, her top priority is not you. It's not helping you. It's not helping her constituents. It's not helping people in this country who need help from the federal government. That's not her top priority. Her top priority is her own career, her own ambitions, her own committee assignments. Those are what her top priorities are. She knows what bringing up a vote on Medicare for all would do to all the corporate Democrats who she's trying to make nice with, who she's trying to fit into the club with. She knows what it would do to their careers. She knows if Nancy Pelosi and Democratic leadership and all the other corporate Democrats if the progressives force a vote on Medicare for all and they all have to vote no on it for their donors, they will never forgive her for that, because that is a permanent stain on all their records. So AOC is more concerned with protecting the reputation of the corporate Democrats who would vote no on Medicare for all, because she's also more concerned about how it would impact her committee assignments and her position in the Democratic Party going forward. That's why she won't bring it up for a floor vote. All the other excuses she's made are just bullshit. It's just rationalization. So like I said, it gets worse. She tries to redirect this energy behind this plan to have the progressives withhold their vote for Nancy Pelosi until she brings Medicare for all up for a vote. She tries to redirect that energy into something completely different that won't have nearly the same effect. She says she replied to her own tweet, so this is just an extension. She's saying, in quote, in contrast, you can use leverage to push for things that can happen and change lives, i.e. a $15 minimum wage vote in the first 100 days. Doable, that's what she says. Elevating longtime progressive champions to important positions in leadership. Also doable. That's the opportunity cost to weigh. So she says it right there. She says it right there. I'm not inferring anything onto this. She's saying if we force this vote for Medicare for all, we might be risking progressives getting positions in leadership. And we have to get progressives into positions of leadership so that they can do what? What are they going to do in positions of leadership if they're not going to fight for Medicare for all? If they don't want to bring it up for a floor vote? So all this other shit is just useless. And then this one kind of pissed me off, where she tries to act like, oh, it's either or. Either you bring Medicare for all up for a vote on the floor and have it fail, or you fight for a $15 minimum wage and it passes. What a weird way to frame this. That's the fight that we're having. We want Medicare for all. We want that vote. So it's telling that AOC, who's supposed to be our representative of the left in Congress, representative of the populist left movement in this country. It's funny how we're giving her the demand, you better do this, you better bring Medicare for all up for a vote. And she's trying to tell us, oh, no, we can't do that. Let's do something else. Isn't that very telling? Isn't that the same kind of move any type of sleazy corporate establishment Democrat would have done? Try to take our eye off the ball and tell us not fight for the thing that we actually want and fight for something that's much less and much smaller and would have way less impact. She kept digging this hole even deeper, and she kept making the situation worse when she was trying to explain why we shouldn't have a vote on Medicare for all. So the next day, Matt Stoller, reporter and journalist, continued this theme of adding AOC and adding Jimmy Dore about this plan. And Matt Stoller says, quote, I'm enjoying Jimmy Dore putting House progressives on the spot on how they aren't demanding anything in return for giving Pelosi their vote for speaker. He's pointing out that they have not organized a coherent political agenda. And before I get into AOC's reply to Matt Stoller's tweet, that last line is so on point. They don't have a coherent political agenda. So for the critics of the squad, AOC, Ilhan Omar, Rashid Tlaib, all the Justice Democrats, what we've been saying is, because we follow politics more than their stands do, more than the low information people who will go out and defend them at all costs. We follow politics more closely than they do. And we see the going-ons. We see what's happening. And not only during this crisis, but for the last 2 years, there isn't like some grand scheme behind the scenes to get the policies that they keep tweeting about. There isn't. All they're doing is sitting there and tweeting about shit and not exercising any power that they have as members of Congress to do those things. So we've been calling this out, and we've been saying they're doing nothing. They're doing nothing. And of course, we get a lot of shit for that and a lot of blowback for that, because people are saying, how dare you say they're not doing anything? They're doing more to get Medicare for all than you are. They're doing more to get Medicare for all than anybody else in Congress. But I keep trying to explain. You guys are just assuming because you see tweets that there's some grand strategy behind the scene, but there isn't. So I love that last line from Matt Stoller, because that's the truth. There is no coherent political agenda. They're just there flailing in the wind, going along to get along, kissing Nancy Pelosi's ass, and hoping that at some point the corporate Democrats have a change of heart and give them Medicare for all because they were nice to them. That's not a strategy. That is not a coherent political agenda. So now let me get to AOC's reply to Matt Stoller. This is AOC's tweet, and she's quoting a line from Matt Stoller. Quote, "They aren't demanding anything is an assumption, and a false one. These structural negotiations happen, they just aren't live tweeted. These negotiations started months ago and include House rules, pay-go exemptions, committee makeup, vote commitments, investigations, etc." So there are a couple things to get to there. She says these negotiations are happening, but they're just not live tweeted. Okay, so I thought the whole point of the left putting everything they got into electing Justice Democrats is so that they represent us, because nobody else in government is representing us. So how are you supposed to represent us if you are going and doing these negotiations for very important things like voting for Nancy Pelosi to be Speaker of the House. If you're doing negotiations for that and you're not telling the people that you're supposed to be representing, that sounds like some typical backroom dealings that go on in Washington that aren't transparent and leave the public out until it's already late, the deal's already made, and look at that. The details of the deal are complete shit. That's what we put you in there to fight against. And you normally understand that. That's why when you are known for live tweeting shit, for live going on Instagram live and doing discussions about shit that's going on in Congress, because you know that we put you there to add a layer of transparency that isn't there so she knows that, but she wants to act like she's being the adult in the room, and there's serious adult negotiations happening, but it's too much to be live tweeting to the rubes, to the plebs, to the people, to the lower people who aren't too bright and they don't really know what's going on. All that the important stuff is happening in back rooms. It's not being live tweeted. So that was a very elitist take to have on this. But also, what the fuck did you hear what she's negotiating for? To vote for Nancy Pelosi to be Speaker of the House, chief architect of neoliberalism and corporatism, who has been an utter failure and adamantly opposed to anything that the left wants. In order to vote for, and of course, shit the bed during the entire coronavirus pandemic and economic crisis. By the way, when you have tremendous leverage and you could actually cost her the speakership, all you're getting for your vote for her is changing some House rules and pay-go exemptions, not even getting rid of pay-go, which is bullshit, and was explicitly put there by Nancy Pelosi when she became Speaker of the House in 2019. It was explicitly put there to block progressive policy priorities, to make it so that they're dead on arrival because of some bullshit budget considerations that are necessary in pay-go. So the whole point of that was to stop progressive policies dead in their tracks. And you're negotiating some pay-go exemptions, keeping the rule there to ultimately block some progressive policies, but some exemptions for what I'm assuming would be some weak sauce, a half measure or quarter measure incrementalism that isn't really going to the extent of Medicare for all or UBI or anything like that. It's just some crumbs to throw at the left and say, oh, we did something. So you're voting, that's the negotiation you're having. Some bullshit changes in the House rules that you can get at any time, and pay-go exemptions. This is what they're fighting for. And committee assignments. This is what they're fighting for. 60 million people lost their job. 60% of businesses that closed because of COVID are closed permanently. 40 million people on the brink of eviction in weeks. While all this is going on, of course, pandemic raging out of control, people have no health care, dying on the streets, going bankrupt. While all this is going on, our representatives, the quote progressives, the leftists in Congress, all they're negotiating for is some bullshit neoliberal incrementalism and their own positions in the Democratic Party, their own positions in committees and positions in leadership. That's how they're using the power to negotiate. So this is what I'm telling you. There is no secret fight going on behind the scenes to get you Medicare for all. They aren't even fighting for that. She's admitting right now they aren't even fighting for that. They gave up on Medicare for all, and all they're trying to get is bullshit that mostly advances their own career, but does nothing for everybody else. That's what they're fighting for. So when I say they sold out, I'm not saying they're getting big checks from corporate donors to stay quiet about things. No, I'm saying they were presented with an option. You either go balls to the wall, you go to the mat and fight for the policies you claim to believe in, or you put all that to the side, you go along to get along, you advance your career, and you get little incrementalism where you can. But that's the decision that they made. So they sold out the movement for their own careers. That's what I mean when I call AOC a sellout. That's what I mean when I say Bernie Sanders is a sellout and the rest of them are sellouts. They sold out the people that got them in office to advance their own careers and do nothing to get the policies that they ran on. So like I said, I hope that this was a watershed moment for the left. I hope that people now actually see these elected progressives for what they actually are: sellouts, frauds, and people who are looking to advance their own careers. Because the situation is as dire as it can possibly get. You cannot imagine a hell world that is worse than where we are now as a country. And if they aren't willing to put it all on the line for the policies that we need, all on the line for the policies that they claim that they support and that they ran on, if they aren't willing to risk it all to get Medicare for All passed, to get UBI, then they're never going to do it. Because what's the point? What's the point of you getting committee assignments if you already proved in the worst crisis in history you're not going to fight for Medicare for All? So you get these committee assignments, you get leadership positions, and then what are you going to do? Once you're there, you're going to make even more rationalizations for why we can't fight for Medicare for All, so you can get even more power. And this is the same trick that's been going on in the Democratic Party for decades. This is the runaround that they've been giving voters for decades. So this is a defining moment. This is them exposing themselves. This is them saying, don't believe us. We're not actually going to do it for you, but we're just going to keep kicking the can down the road and hoping and just praying to God, fingers crossed, that you don't catch on and that you don't actually turn on us and see us for the turncoats that we actually are. They have gone from these quote revolutionaries to people pushing the status quo, defending the status quo. That's what AOC is. That's what Bernie Sanders is. That's what Ilhan Omar, Rashida Tlaib, and Ro Khanna. That's what they're all doing. They're defending the status quo and telling everybody, we can't fight now. Always, we can't fight now. Let's do it some other time. Let's do it 2 years from now. Let's do it 4 years from now. Let's do it 6 years. Let's do it 10 years from now. All while people are dying in the streets. All while there are thousands and thousands of cars miles long in every city in this country waiting at food banks because they can't afford to feed their family. Shoplifting has almost doubled across the country for basic essentials because people can't afford to take care of their family. While all this is happening, they're going to tell you we can't fight now. We have to maintain the status quo. We can't lose an inch. So we got to keep our heads down, go along to get along, maintain the status quo. As detrimental and disastrous and untenable as the status quo is, they become status quo defenders. And they're going to tell you not to rock the boat because we might lose the little gains that we have now. The gains don't mean shit. I don't care if Kevin McCarthy and the Republicans take the House and get the speakership. I don't care because you know what? They're going to deny us Medicare for All just like the Democrats. I don't care if they get all the committee assignments because you know what? They're all going to be corporatists just like the Democrats who'd be in those committee assignments. I don't care. They're going to deny us the same policies. They're going to push the same disastrous policies. So I don't care. And that's the position that these elected progressives would have if they were actual fighters. They would be willing to risk it all and say, I don't give a damn if Kevin McCarthy becomes speaker. We need Medicare for all. I don't give a damn if Nancy Pelosi takes my committee assignments. We need Medicare for all. I don't care if they try to force me out of the House. We need Medicare for all. I don't care if this is career suicide. I'll go down swinging. I'll go down with the ship because people need Medicare for all right now. If they actually cared about it, that's what they would be doing. But they're not. Instead, they're giving you excuses, giving you the runaround, trying to do apologetics for the status quo and rationalize why we should sit here and do nothing. While the establishment and the corporatists in the government fleece the country and leave us for dead in the middle of a crisis, the best Democrats, the elected progressives, are going to tell us that why we should accept that, why it should be okay, and why we shouldn't fight back. That's what they're telling us. So I hope that this is a wake-up call to anybody out there who is still defending these elected progressives, who is still defending AOC, who still sees them as an ally fighting for the policies that you want. I hope that this was a wake-up call because they can't get any clearer than this. They aren't fighting for you. The only way you get Medicare for all is direct action, public pressure campaigns, organized and strategic strikes, maybe even a general strike. We need to put untenable politicians pressure on these politicians to let them understand that this is unacceptable, and we will not let business as usual continue. We will not allow the status quo to continue while you guys are letting the people that you're supposed to be representing die for your own benefit and the benefit of your donors. That isn't an option anymore. We need to view them as what they are. They become establishment Democrats, status quo defending Democrats, and they are not our ally. They are on the opposite side. Same with Bernie Sanders. Don't want us to do a general strike. The one thing that we have, you don't want us to be organized and do strikes against the both parties and to pressure them to do our policies. Bernie Sanders instead wants you to organize, but he wants you to organize to let more Democrats, to let more AOCs, to let more people who are going to roll over for Nancy Pelosi and not fight for you at all. That's what Bernie Sanders is telling you to do. So don't listen to these people. If you listen to these people, if you follow their lead, we will never get anything that we need. And it's not impossible for us to get these things. Every other modern country in the world has figured it out. They all went through moments where they had to make that transition, but they did it eventually. They all got to some form of universal health care or single payer. They all realize that the government has a role in providing basic income to people, especially during a time of crisis. And they are getting these things because they aren't complacent, and they're willing to go in the street and make politicians uncomfortable and rock the boat because they know that they deserve better, so they're going to fight for it. So this is our time in this country to do this thing. And don't follow AOC, don't follow Bernie Sanders, because they're going to be the gatekeepers, and they're going to be the ones to tell you you're not allowed to do that. Don't do that. Instead, keep doing the same shit. Stay quiet. Try to suck up to Nancy Pelosi and suck up to the corporate Democrats, and maybe they'll throw us some crumbs and some scraps, and you should be happy with that.